Rethink your behavior. Cook it, store it, share it. Just don't waste it. For tips and recipes, visit SaveTheFood.com. Brought to you by NRDC and the Ad Council.
And thank you for joining us once again right here on Herbally Yours, brought to you by Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse. You can always join me on ground, where we give classes outside. We do things like walking around and identifying edible and medicinal wild plants, which are actually growing right here on the campus of Nassau Community College, as well as everywhere else, including in your backyard. And many people join us to make medicine out of these plants and know how to use it for themselves and their family. We also go to Chinatown, where we investigate the use of natural medicine that has been around for thousands of years. And it's sort of like a little trip to another country for a day. So you can find out more about that at naturalnurse.com under calendars. Our guest today is Dr. Geoffrey Broderick. And Dr. Broderick has been a veterinarian for 50 years in Huntington, New York, right here locally. And his groundbreaking research helped to solidify the use of cranberry juice as a therapeutic agent. I'd like to talk about that study because you actually had that published. It's called The Cure, Prevention, and Control of Cystitis in Cats. Dr. Broderick, that's a landmark paper. What made you do that research?
Well, because what they were doing is the treatment for cystitis in male cats was to cut off their penis and make them and give them a vaginal type opening so that the garbage coming out of their bladder wouldn't get stuck anymore. Well, what I did is I took 16 cats that was supposed to be put to sleep, which is worse, and they were all brought in to be put to sleep. And I got those cats, and I had to beg, borrow, and steal the things and pay the people to not put them to sleep, and all kinds of stuff that I had to do. And that was my research element was 16 cats. All cats, every one of them survived. Nobody blocked anymore. I changed that thing, and then I changed it through acidification of the urinary bladder, because the urinary bladder was what was getting infected with these crystals, the struvite crystal, and I found that by acidifying the urinary bladder, which I did in cats and women, that the struvite crystals dissolved, and if they dissolved, they didn't irritate the bladder anymore, and if the bladder wasn't irritated, they wouldn't get an infection, and they wouldn't have the pain and the inflammation and everything else. And I did it through acidification of the urinary tract. And that's how I did this, and I received that award from the Committee for World Health.
And that's many years ago, but actually the use of cranberry juice and vitamin C and other natural therapies is actually very much embraced now, even in conventional medicine.
That's true, but I was the one who did it, and that was, 35, 40 years ago.
It's amazing. And also, you were awarded by the California Orthomolecular Medical Society, where you looked through time-lapse radiography at dissolving a very large crystal.
Well, we had the big stone. That was the size of a golf ball, and you could see by treating it orthomolecularly, and Linus Pauling, who came up with that name, was sitting right in the front row, because Linus and I had just had lunch together, and this was the first presentation after lunch, and I showed them the Pac-Man attitude of the Pac-Man looking thing eating the stone away, and that was the acidification of doing it orthomolecularly, and it was beautiful. That was the first time in history that a stone had ever been dissolved, instead of going in there with baskets and this and that. And they couldn't get a basket on this stone because this stone was bigger than a golf ball. And it showed the eating of the stone away, dissolving, and then, of course, I developed the food cornucopia that acidified naturally, brought the natural acidification, very slight, very light, very, very, very easy and soft, but over a period of not too long, these stones all dissolve. And no more surgery, no more big expense, actually no expense at all. And that's the whole cornucopia theory, is that when you get off of the garbage pet food and you are on the food that I make, it doesn't happen anymore. So they don't get the stones, they don't get sick, they don't get these different diseases. I've watched everything melt away over my career, and I can't tell you one disease that didn't melt away and that it didn't help the animals. So it's a economic win-win for the animal as well as the client, because some of these things run into tens of thousands of dollars, which is totally unnecessary.
Right, when you're talking about surgery. So I want to remind our listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and my guest today is Dr. Geoffrey Broderick, and he is a veterinarian right here in Huntington, and also the formulator and founder of Cornucopia Pet Foods. So let's talk specifically. Like, I know that you have things in your pet foods that are very, very good. They're good for animals and they're good for people, such as probiotics.
That's correct. It's loaded with probiotics, and this isn't some nouveau thing. We've been doing this for, this is the 27th day of my 49th year.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
So these are things that people would come by and they'd go to, conventions and stuff, and they say, "Oh, look at this, it's natural pet food. Oh my God, isn't that cute?" You want to smack them. So it wasn't cute at all. It was scientific research down to the core. And then, so I started the natural pet food industry. Natural now is ridiculous. It's just a buzzword. Every single solitary thing in my food is organic. Way, way, way beyond what you can do with natural. Because aspartame is natural, and it will hook you and make your animal, addicted to the food, the same as sugar addicts you.
Well, let's remind our listeners what aspartame is also called NutraSweet, but now they've actually renamed it. You're allowed to call it natural sweetener.
That's correct.
To hide it inside food. This is both true for humans as well as animal food.
That's correct, and it's in the book. All these things of why it's in Compassion for Pets, how they get away with all this. And this is FDA, the people that are supposed to be protecting us, is protecting really industry and not us. But let me make something real clear to everybody. The one who protects you and your children and my children are the animals of this world, and they're the children that will give you a special thing called unconditional love. So you're the one that's responsible. You're the one. I'm the one. My animals for me, your animals for you. Let's make no mistake about it. It goes, the blame goes on the part of the consumer. If the consumer wants everything on the cheap, that's what they're going to force people to get. When they stop buying this garbage that's out there called pet food, then they will they'll get cornucopia and see what happens in 90 days. I mean, it's just incredible. Then they'll realize that responsibility toward them works because other people will someday turn around and start making better pet foods.
Well, let's talk about antioxidants. How are antioxidants helpful when they're consumed?
Well, the antioxidants are the ones that prevent disease. The antioxidants prevent leaky gut. The antioxidants prevent they prevent the immune system.
Well, when you think about metal, and we know that oxidation causes a change in iron, that's something that an antioxidant would prevent.
That's correct. It's what your body's doing is it's constantly trying to rust. Actually, it's trying not to rust. But the things that you put in your body and the things that you do to your body, bad food, alcohol, too much sun, too much sunscreen, stuff that you put on your body and in your body, those are the things that makes your body rust, because the antioxidants that your body produces can't keep up with it. So it has to come from the food.
And how about omega-3 fatty acids? Because I know you add a lot of things that would really help the membrane stay flexible.
That's correct. And look at the fish. The fish, omega-3 fatty acid is like winter oil that we used to in my day, because I'm old enough to be people's grandfather. And so in my day, you would use oil for your car. Well, the car wouldn't start in the winter, so they developed, because it was sludgy and thick, so they developed an oil which was thin. Well, the thin oil is the oil found in fish, and that's why fish can swim around in the water, and they don't get sludgy with their circulatory system, because their oil is omega-3.
And people have heard about that. Now, we're actually getting close to the end, but I do want to remind our listeners that we often talk about Naval Expo. You can go on that website, navalexpo.com, and we have so many speakers there, and Dr. Geoff Broderick may, in fact, be joining us next time it's there, and also Health Media, because we bring together a lot of this information for you. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Broderick, for being our guest today and for creating and offering Cornucopia natural pet food. People can find out more at cornucopiapetfoods.com. And I want to thank you, listeners, for tuning into Herbally Yours, produced at the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.